Whether you're seeking inspiration, wisdom, or a fresh perspective on leadership and entrepreneurship, our Building Interest podcast has you covered. Together, we explore the successes of groundbreaking leaders, the triumphs, the challenges, and the invaluable lessons they learned along the way. Our discussions go beyond strategic decision making and delve into the personal hobbies and passions that keep these leaders inspired and grounded in their work. I'm your host, Greg Farber. Let's jump right in. Today, we're joined by Jay Tuli, president of Leader Bank. Jay is a recurring guest of ours here at the Building Interest podcast. He's not only an inspiring leader, but also an entrepreneur in the financial space with a passion for innovation. I'm very excited to have you back, Jay. This is a great opportunity to do a little year-end recap, and welcome back.
Thanks, Greg. Excited to be here.
So as I said, we'll jump right in. Just to kind of kick things off, I want you to think of the industry as a whole. So banking overall, financial services. If you could choose one word to describe 2024 for our industry, what would that be?
I would say, and not trying to be comedic, but better. Yeah,
Okay.
the word would be better. And I think part of it was, you know, 2022, 2023 were really just difficult years for the whole banking environment. In 2024 was a year that was better. It's not uh I would call it like a great year for banking, but it was better in that, we're sort of turning around. There's light at the end of the tunnel. Banks are starting to improve again in terms of profitability and stability and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of what I would use for the year.
I think that's a great sentiment and not at all a word I would have expected. So quality choice of a random word there. Now let's turn that focus on Leader. For our little slice of heaven, how would you describe 2024 for Leader Bank specifically? Is there anything that stands out to you for us?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for 2024 for us, I would probably say it was like a year of focus. If I compare it to our prior years, there'd been years of great growth. There had been years of great innovation, years of starting new businesses. 2024 was sort of a year where we digested all of the things and the new things and the new growth that we had experienced, during the COVID years and a lot of like discipline we wanted to put back on how we allocate capital and think about our financials. So yeah, this was a year of focus, sort of, sticking to our core businesses, what we do well, getting better at the existing things we're doing. And I think we made a lot of progress. It's kind of like, fixing the plumbing in a property. Like you're not going to really see it or notice it, but it's really important and it um, uh, helps for the long term. And so that was kind of what the year was for us.
And it doesn't mean sitting back and doing nothing. There's actual real work happening here to lay that groundwork to be better forward. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I mean, so one thing in particular, like we learned a lot of lessons, I would say, from this mini financial crisis that happened in 23 with First Republic Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, and Signature Bank when they failed. There were some really important lessons to learn there. And I think in 2024, we had specific goals about how we wanted to um, restructure our balance sheet. And like what I mean by that is like thinking through, what kind of loans do we want to put on the balance sheet? What kind of deposits do we want to put on the balance sheet? But more importantly, like how do they go together? So I always use this analogy like peanut butter is good and pizza is good, but a peanut butter pizza sandwich is not a
That
good
doesn't
thing.
sound very good. No.
Right? So peanut butter jelly sandwich might be great. And so I think we're trying to think through like, okay, well, the loans that we put on, how do they how does that match up with the types of deposits we put on, and to them together, does that make a nice tasting sandwich, And so that was some of the focus this year, really being very specific and very deliberate and focused about what how we want to grow the balance sheet and kind of restructure it so we're really set up for the future. I think we made just great progress on that.
So while everybody listening is now running to the cupboard to get some peanut butter and maybe some pizza, if we carry that analogy on, let's say that we're the peanut butter, right? And we've kind of gotten this focus going on with us, but now there's still that industry at large out there. Are there trends or changes going on in the financial industry that are sort of pizza to our peanut butter, where do we need to adapt to things out there, or is the industry as a whole, like you said, there's some new stability now and everything to where we're okay to just make our own peanut butter sandwich and we're good?
I mean, the industry, I think is in a lot better place. And I think, every time there is a situation like a little crisis, everyone learns from that and gets better. And so I think a lot of the banks out there are doing the same thing, really trying to stay focused, stick to their cores, being very specific about what they're adding to the balance sheet. We are noticing um, especially in the back half of this year, a lot more merger and acquisition activity. So M&A activity where banks are buying each other. And so that trend of less and less banks seems to be something that may continue in the next few years. That's definitely a trend. Um, but I think banks they really thrive in like stability, you
Right.
know? And if you look back to 2020, the last 4 years have been anything but stable. First, you have COVID, and so the Fed is printing record amounts of money into the system because of fear of the economy will stall because of COVID.
Right. And the rate environment to go with it.
Right, so rates fall to all-time lows. Okay, and so at first, this is actually a great thing for the whole economy. I mean, almost all businesses because there's just money being printed. But then that creates a lot of inflation. So the Fed starts to jack up rates in an unprecedented way, almost 500 basis points in 1 year. Now, for financial institutions, you go from an all-time low to an all-time high in like 24 months. That is like the opposite of what banks thrive on, which is like stability. And now we're on the other end now, though, which is inflation is starting to come down and the Fed is starting to bring rates down slowly. So to the extent that we come back to kind of like a more normalized market, that's a good thing for banks. But we are entering a new administration. Um, we are entering a world where there's a lot of geopolitical concerns. So it's kind of hard to tell like what the new normal is. Um, I would say from our point of view, we are learning like we have to be ready for a macro environment that is constantly changing at a greater speed than historically.
And if anything, the last 4 years have taught us
Yeah,
how to do that.
totally.
Would you say that there was any kind of aha moment in 2024 that really kind of influenced either your leadership style or the path for the bank forward?
Um, I, I mean, a few things. One is more just like something I already know, but kind of reinforced. And the other is like maybe a little aha. Um, so the aha is that, clients are actually pretty loyal and they will stick around with you for a very long period of time as long as you treat them well and you keep delivering your service offering. Um, and I've seen that time and time again, not only with our own clients, where I look at how we've grown and like we have clients that have been with us like decades. But also clients at other organizations where, say, the bank failed or got acquired, and as long as the new system and the new organization is treating them well, they'll generally stay. It's when they're not being treated how they want to be, that is the moment that a client finally says, "Okay, let me think about something else." So, to that's a realization. Um, I think the other thing is that these cycles come and go, and it's important to not like overreact too much to a cycle. Almost like, for us to like think past it a little bit. Like, yeah,
Right.
this is a great time. It won't always be great. Yes, this is a really tough time, but it won't always be tough. And to plan and think and almost keep your sort of cultural mood in a manner that um, is normalized, even if the macro environment's all over the place.
I heard someone say the other day, that old phrase, when one door closes, another one opens,
Yeah.
and their response was, well, your house is haunted. You need to get out of there. But I think more realistically, right, that every time we have one of these cycles, whether it's perceived to be an up cycle or a down cycle, because everyone's viewpoint might be a little different, we could find some unexpected opportunities in those. You see anything like that going on here in the last year where there is all this sort of turmoil that has now stabilized a little bit, that's presented some new opportunities?
Yeah, we've benefited in several ways in the last couple of years, particularly from the bank mergers and acquisitions, whether through failure or just a normal M&A. So, as an example, we started an SBA lending team, small business loans lending team, the beginning part of this year. And those folks came from another bank that, was having organizational change, and that has been awesome. And that is probably a new business line that we will continue to grow and invest in over, the next decade. So really excited about that. We recruited a team that caters to startups and VCs on the depository side. Again, another result of an acquisition, and that has been great. And we picked up some commercial lenders recently. Also the result of another local acquisition. So I see, yeah, every time there's a change, you know, I would say it goes through this period where there might be some difficulty, but then when you get to the other end of it, now there's opportunity. And so staying focused on like, okay, what can the opportunity be? How can we better serve our clients? How can we pick up some new capabilities? That's super important. And I think that'll play well into 2025 also.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that's a great example where we didn't always offer, a full suite maybe of SBA loans or things. And to be presented with an opportunity where we can make that part of what we do and fit into our core of obsessing over clients and making sure we do it right and have the right people, I think that's a great example. Um, I'm going to shift a little bit now to sort of the mentality behind that, right? And so when you have up and down cycles, you have some positivity and you have some negativity. And a common theme I've heard from guests on our podcast is that there really is a need for positivity and leadership. We got to lift people up, not put them down or hold them back. We want to lead with energy, excitement, and hopefully a smile rather than through leading through fear, right? So these are themes that have come up through a number of our episodes. And we've all had that day where we just wake up on the wrong side of the bed. And it doesn't matter how good your coffee is, you're just in a foul place, you get to work. What helps you, Jay Tuli, through those mornings? And do you have any advice for our listeners how you can ditch that negativity and turn that bad morning into a great day?
Yeah, no, it's a really important question. And I think for all of our managers and leaders, how you bring yourself into the organization every day is probably the most important thing. And I've observed myself, even if I don't come in on a day set up right, mentally, emotionally, I've noticed like I make bad decisions sometimes because I'm just being reactive, I'm being moody, and
Preoccupied?
I'm being preoccupied, I'm distracted. So for me at least, like the harder things get, um, the more important it is for me to work out and meditate. So like I did a lot of really hard Pelotons during that March mini banking crisis. And I just need the endorphins. I need to be able to clear my mind. A lot of walking. I walk around my block like all the time. My neighbors think I'm a little crazy, but actually it really helps me like be calm and think and something that I'm like anxious about after like 20 minutes of walking, you sort of looked at it from like lots of different angles. You're like, it's not that big a deal, And so, yeah, that type of personal stuff, like how you have your own reset button, um, I think is one of the differentiators for a leader or manager on how they deal with like difficult times.
I was going to ask you about something that you might have learned about yourself this year that surprised you, or maybe a personal win or bigger
Yeah.
something, big or small, from this year. It almost sounds like you may have already answered that question um, with the walking and the meditating and thing. Is there anything else that you think really
Yeah,
stands
well,
out from this last year? Like, okay, I personally crossed some threshold in
yeah,
2024.
yeah, it's actually really interesting because my personal journey in the last 18 months in some way mirrors my professional journey as far as like the environment. So in our last podcast last year, I think you asked me a similar type question. And my response to you was I'm trying to um, learn how far I can push myself from a physical aspect. And I was training for this like really crazy big hike
Yep.
in Sun Valley. And so I was training every day. I was in probably the best shape of my life, and then I actually I tore my meniscus shortly thereafter. So it was about January of this year when I tore my meniscus, and so now I'm in an all-time low. So I'm going from an all-time high where I was telling myself like, "Wow, I'm in the best shape of my life," to I tore my meniscus, and I did a surgery, and I had to um, I basically couldn't walk for a month and all this stuff. And so then that was an all-time low. And I think where I am now is, 9, 10 months later, where I've recovered and now I'm back to strength building. It's kind of an awesome journey because I feel like that's where the bank is in many ways. We hit this all-time low in the industry when these banks failed and there was a lot of fear about community banks in 23. Um, we recovered in 2024 and now we're back to strength building. We're back to like building new capabilities and figuring out how are we going to compete. And that's how I am personally now too. I'm back into that place where you want to be, but I've just, as I reflect over the last 12 months, like, yeah, how you deal with that downtime is like everything. And so for me, um, I just have had to keep remembering, like, okay, this is, just put a timetable to it. It's going to take 6, 7 months. I got to do this activity or PT or whatever, every week, and I'll be back there. And so it's I'm in a happy place now just because I've come out on the other end. But I feel like you learn the most by yourself during those times for sure.
It's almost like if our listeners hadn't been here at the beginning and knew that we were talking about banking, this was your year of focus.
Yeah,
And that translates personally that you had that setback and you had to sort of just focus back a little bit on yourself and rebuild the things you do best and then be able to move forward from that.
yeah, yeah.
It's very interesting actually how similar those stories are when you remove them from their
Yeah,
context.
right, right. Yeah.
Um, so the bank has had a rebuilding year. Jay has had a rebuilding year. What excites you most about the upcoming year? You have any particular goals, whether it's for yourself or for the bank, that you want to share with us heading into 2025?
Yeah, I think with 2025, I'm feeling very optimistic. I think there's a level of optimism because the economy is sort of in good shape. Rates are coming back to something more normal and sustainable. And, what we also saw last year is a lot of our clients were sort of just on the sidelines waiting. Because if you think of an investor, right, that's trying to make a big investment, like the macro economy matters, and when you're really uncertain, you sort of just wait. So we're seeing them to come off the sidelines, starting to do things like buy real estate or buy businesses or whatever it might be. So I'm excited from that point of view. Um, I'm excited that we have made some really good changes, like the ones I discussed, um, in in our balance sheet and our discipline in capital allocation that I think will keep us in a really good shape for the next 5, 10 years. And what I mean by that is like I think we've taken some risk off the table. I think we've diversified. I think we're doing a better job with our interest rate risk management. So just a bunch of good healthy habits have been created that I'm excited about because when you compound them over 5, 10 years, good stuff happens. So yeah, I would say that's probably what's most in my mind. I don't know if I have a specific goal in 2025 professionally, other than, now rebuild and gain strength as far as like continuing to gain some market share in the businesses we're already in, continue to up the bar on client service and things like that.
How about on a personal level? Is there anything you've always wanted to try and maybe, or you used to love doing and life got in the way and 2025 is going to be the year you finally do it?
I'm like really into basketball these days, Greg. So I've been playing for a long time,
I feel
but
like you've been into basketball
I've
for a
been
long time, but
and this year I'm like even more into it than before. And
so you're going to
honestly,
try out for the NBA this year? Is that your big goal?
uh, honestly, that is what got me through my injury. Just being able to be like, okay, if I get back in shape, I can play again. And you know what it is? It's just a group of like friends that we play every Sunday, but it's just so much fun and it's competitive. And so, um, I don't have any big challenges. I think I need like another year to really like gain full strength before I try to do something crazy. So that might be the 2026 answer for you is what the next challenge would
There you
be.
go. All right, we'll
Yeah.
table that and ask you that question again
Yeah.
next year. Um, so at this point, we're going to go to a segment we've been doing this year called What Would You Choose? We'll ask you a couple of this or that questions, and you just quickly choose which one you prefer. It's kind of a rapid fire type of thing. You can elaborate on your answer. That's not, there's no right or wrong, obviously, but it's just kind of a quick, like, oh, what's the first sort of thing that jumps to your mind?
All right.
Do you prefer big picture strategy or day-to-day problem solving?
Big picture strategy.
I was like, you hesitated very long there. I thought for
Yeah.
sure you were going to immediately say big picture
I think I
strategy.
think I think I I would have told you day-to-day problem solving like 3 years ago. But the truth is we have so many capable managers and leaders at the bank now
There's a good
that
process in place.
I'm not actually the right person. There's a lot of people better than me to solve a lot of the problems. So my focus has been more on, yeah, the strategy side.
So when you're doing that and you're looking at the strategy, do you favor doubling down on what works or exploring new ideas?
Doubling down on what works.
Yeah. Speak to our strengths. We're really good at this. This is where we're going to build
Yeah.
further and be even
Yeah,
stronger.
yeah, I think like one lens I'm using for strategy right now is like if we do this X, can we be committed to it for like 20 years? Or when things get hard in year two, are you going to say, "Nah, we're not going to do that anymore. Let's go back." Because if the answer is we're not going to be doing it, in a really long time, then let's get out of it. And so when we build on our strengths, like we're already in it, right? We're
Hmm.
already in residential mortgage lending. Like that's the DNA and like all this stuff. So when we add something like insurance, for example, that is just already piggybacking on it. So in a way we're strengthening our commitment. And so yeah, so that's one lens I use.
I think that's a really interesting answer because we always talk about how entrepreneurial we are and how there's always an element of sort of startup at Leader Bank because we are a young institution and we've developed so much in the way of technology and our own brand and our people. And yet, you're absolutely right. What's kept us strong is that core of what we do best. So I
Yeah.
like that answer. Um, do you want to be known more for inspiring others, or do you feel more like you want to be inspired by others?
Oh, that's a really good one. I don't mean to not answer the question specifically, but I feel like you can't inspire others unless you're inspired. I really do feel that way. And so I am always looking for inspiration. I'm not specifically looking to inspire others. That may happen along the way. Um, and I'm, everyone is always inspiring someone else, but I think the best thing I can do is be inspired myself, and then it'll rub off. Um, to put it a different way, if I were inspiring others and not inspired myself, I don't know if that would feel right.
Right, you would lose your course a little bit.
Yeah, yeah,
Being inspired is one of those things that it makes you better. And then in turn, if you turn around and do something better, then
yeah,
that can be inspiring to others. So it really makes a lot of
exactly.
sense how you
Yeah.
phrase that. Okay, this one's a little more emotional then. Passion or purpose?
I think purpose,
Yeah?
purpose. Um, I mean, they're related, right? I think like all these things you're asking, there's some mix and blend of both. But Well, one thing is like passion, it has different levels. Like it can fade over time, then it can come back, and but a purpose, I feel like, you have a specific purpose, a specific role that either you or your organization or your family or like whatever it is needs to and is best suited to play in the world, in the community, whatever. And so if you don't provide that purpose, there's a hole. And so hopefully you're passionate about it too. Um, but I feel like a leader, our purpose is the most important thing. We want passionate people to work at leader, but I'm sure we could all be like passionate about something else, but I don't know if we would be
We're
providing as
here
much.
for a common
We're here,
purpose.
we're here for common purpose. Yeah.
Now, I mean, this next one, you might want to say, I picked both, but you have to
Yeah.
pick just one. Cr
Okay.
Christmas or New Year's?
New Year's.
Yeah?
I like New Year's because just that mental reset of of the year. It's a time to like reflect back and think about the future. Um,
Do you get into the whole resolutions thing?
I do, but I do it for my birthday to the next birthday. So it's always
Oh,
October to
okay.
October. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Interesting
yeah,
take.
yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of inspiration, we're going to go to our last segment here. And this is where we ask our guests to bring something, whether it's tangible or it's a sentiment or anything else, to share about something that inspires or inspired you.
Yeah.
And so, question is, what do you have to share with us today that was an inspiration to you and why?
I've been recently involved with this cool organization called Refuge Point, and they help refugees. And Sasha actually was on the podcast earlier this year.
Yep.
And there's a really cool story where they helped this refugee come from Africa to the Boston area. I think like 4 or 5 years ago, but his nephew and nieces were still stuck there, and they don't have parents anymore. And so they have been working like tirelessly to bring them here to connect with their only immediate family member, their uncle, and that just happened a few months ago. So it's
Oh,
just
wow.
such a really like amazing story of perseverance, of reuniting a family, of in like the American dream, and it's so amazing to see like a recent immigrant come into the U.S. and like what that means for them, and the hope and opportunity. So yeah, I mean, I'm super inspired by that organization, that story in particular.
I love it. And all that we see in the news today about how we're all like against each other all the time, to know that that hope and that American dream still exists, that's really cool.
Yeah,
And no, nobody should suffer anywhere, don't get me wrong, but to hear a story that also helps the children, because children are never at fault, right? They didn't bring this on themselves. So
yeah,
I love that. That is an amazing story. And actually reach out to me sometime and tell me a little more
yeah, for
about that.
sure.
That sounds like an awesome organization. So that's really it kind of for the basic design of what we wanted to talk about, and a recap, and hear a little bit about the bank and a little bit about Jay. If there's anything else you want to add, kind of to part ways here for the year and usher out 24 and in 25.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here with you, Greg. Also, I want to thank you. You've been doing this podcast for us for a little bit now, and I know for sure when you join us, how long has it been?
At the bank,
15? Yeah, the
it's
bank,
going to be
15 years?
16 years.
16 years. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you did not have in your mind that you would be a podcast host. There were no podcasts back then in the
Let's
first
be
place.
honest, 3 years ago, I wasn't thinking I was going to be a podcast host.
But you're doing a great job, and I think it's been fun to highlight different aspects of the bank. I'm excited about 2025. I think we're very well positioned. I think personally, I'm in a good spot too, and yeah, ready for the new year.
Awesome. Same here. I really appreciate your sentiments, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all of that with us. And best to us and Leader Bank in the next year. Don't forget to subscribe and rate our show. The Building Interest podcast is live on all podcast platforms, YouTube, and TikTok. We want to hear what you think of each episode and encourage you to submit any questions that you want us to cover. So please find us on YouTube or TikTok and comment your thoughts. All opinions expressed by Jay Tuli are his own and not the opinions of LeaderBank NA. For more information on today's subject, visit leaderbank.com. In addition to past episodes, you can also find our Learning Center blog for more insights. This podcast is a production of LeaderBank, an equal housing lender, member FDIC, NMLS number 449250.